Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Daniela and you're watching Town of Tawiah. If this is your first time watching, welcome. This video is going to be about colorism and performative diversity as it pertains to the entertainment industry. Let's start from the beginning. With the rise of diversity monitoring and inclusive recruitment over the past few years, you've most likely noticed that there has been a shift in the demographic of many workspaces. Put frankly, I think a lot of businesses have had a big scare after the Black Lives Matter movement and noticed that their lack of inclusivity was not only noticed based on a lot of biases that they had within their hiring and casting divisions. Therefore, there have been considerable improvements made to remove the recruitment biases that affect people of colour. Sounds simple and fair, and relatively easy. However, it seems that people have found a loophole to keep shows and films tailored toward a wider audience, even while having more diversity. Okay, so this is the part of the discussion that raises a few questions. The first being, how is it that we have more diversity but still lack the inclusivity and representation that was needed to begin with? Well, the first and most obvious answer is how people of colour are being casted and the roles and tropes that they are made to represent. I want you to think about some of the films and series and TV programmes that you've seen most recently. Have you noticed that black female leads, they usually look something like this? Colorism. By definition, colorism is dislike and unfair treatment of members of a particular racial group who have a darker skin color than others.
I'm not color struck, guys. Come on. No. All those girls just have mixed parents and their hair is long and curly and they have... Oh my God, am I color struck?
The issue of colorism is not a new surging concept, and the premise that fairer-skinned people of color are given privileges is a long-lasting problem, one that dates as far as centuries ago. With the effects of colonialism across the world, Eurocentric features and attributes have been idolized, leaving many countries with an association of Eurocentricity, including facial features, hair texture, and skin shade, with wealth, high class, and beauty. This has had a long-lasting effect in many communities.
In Haiti, they want lighter kids because their life is going to be easier. But how much of that is just European beauty standards? How much of that is internalized hate? I was talking to one member of my family and they were like, oh yeah, back when I was a kid, I dated a Haitian girl and she was really black, but she was beautiful. And it's like, why did you have to use the word but? Like, why but? Can't she just be beautiful?
The fetishization and idolization of fair-skinned women within society has gone so far that within the music industry, artists would rather pose as someone that's fair-skinned, whether that be by bleaching their skin complexion or simply referring to themselves as a light-skinned woman or a yellow bone, even when they are not, in order to gain popularity and success.
Yellow bonus, what he wants, what he wants. Yellow bonus, what he wants, what he wants.
Danny bops along to the track, mouthing along to the lyrics. Yellow bone is what he wants.
Light skin, I'm a yellow bone. In my opinion, that's just what I am. So it's like, it wasn't something that I looked at so deeply. I'm not a colorist, I'm not a racist.
But the Western entertainment industry is not the only culprit of displaying an obsession with fair skin within media. South Asia's billion-dollar film industry, Bollywood, displays some of the most blatant acts of colorism within film as it pertains to the casting of their actors.
Hassan Minhaj also tore into Bollywood's hypocrisy for condemning racism while backing skin lightening creams.
Hollywood stars do skin whitening commercials so we don't look black. Thank you, Britain.
Scale. God, I want to be assassinated right now. Wow. Whitening face scrub. Whitening face wash. Moving on to makeup. And look at these foundation sticks. That's chalk, mayo, ivory, and vanilla.
So unfortunate. How sad that they come up with literally a product which states natural fairness. I'm pretty sure you're gonna wonder like how you've never seen this in shelves and aisles, and that's probably because it's popular in a lot of stores in Middle Eastern regions as well as like South Asian regions. But this is so sad. Like, I'm so upset that I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw Nivea on it.
The film industry is not exempt from this form of discrimination, and it clearly favours fairer-skinned actresses, particularly as it pertains to casting love interests or desired women over their dark-skinned counterparts.
You know, Hollywood's, I guess you could say, acceptable version of a black girl, and that has to change. You know what I mean? Like, we're vastly interesting for me to just be the only representation of that.
Now you may be wondering, but how about all of the dark-skinned actresses that we do see? How about Viola Davis, Lupita Nyong'o, Mindy Kaling, Gabrielle Union? Well, that sparks the next part of this discussion, how dark-skinned women are presented on the screen. The first issue of representation I'll be discussing is the erasure of dark-skinned actresses by their fair-skinned, often biracial, counterparts. In 2001, ABC blessed our screens with a sitcom named My Wife and Kids about the hilarious dynamic of the Kyle family, an African-American family who lived a relatively normal life. The family in the first season consisted of the father, Michael Kyle, played by the Wayans' brother, Damon Wayans. The mother, Jay Kyle, portrayed by Tisha Campbell as a fiery, take-no-nonsense mother who's the perfect balance for Michael Kyle's nonsensical approach to parenting. Michael Jr., the airheaded eldest son, played by Georgia Gore.
I am so confused, lost in the friction of life. No, I have never read a dictionary in my life.
Claire, the eldest daughter, whose personality was an exact duplicate to her mother's, was played by Jaz Raycole. Like her mother on the show, she was intelligent, self-assured, strong-willed, and extremely talented. And the youngest daughter, KD, was adorably portrayed by Parker McKennick-Posey. I and many others like myself that watched the show remember the feeling of being represented because of the casting of Claire. So you can imagine my surprise when that was short-lived and Claire's role was somehow replaced in season 2 with Jennifer Freeman, who looked and acted like a completely different character. Not only had Claire's character's whole image changed, she lost her strong-willed personality and somehow became a simple-minded teen who couldn't count to 10 without batting her eyelashes to distract from her lack of numerical skills. It's safe to say the representation that the show previously had was lost, and Claire's ditzy persona, accompanied by a new complexion and hair texture, felt like more of a rebranding than an accidental lack of continuity. Now, while the true reason original actress Jaz Raycole left the show is ambiguous, what we know for sure is that it wouldn't have been hard to find a replacement actress that allowed some form of continuity to Claire's character. However, the complete rebranding of the character painted a clear message of the erasure of dark-skinned women on the screen by their fairer counterparts, an image that is repeated too many times, regardless of whether or not that was the producer's intention. In 2016, fans of the legendary Nina Simone were keen to see a biographical film based on the songstress's life and music career. Nina Simone's undeniable talent, clothed in her eccentricity and dark skin, made her a joy to behold as she stood in places where people that looked like her could only dream, and would leave crowds of prejudiced hecklers silenced in awe of her talent. So you can imagine, the decision of casting who would play Nina Simone should be carefully and critically decided. A few candidates that would naturally come to mind would possibly be Michaela Cole, who both resembles the singer and has the acting skills to deliver such a role, or even a fellow performer like the likes of Jennifer Hudson, or possibly even Normani. But this is Hollywood, so of course director Cynthia Moore thought it would be an acceptable decision to make Zoe Saldana the lead role and use dark-toned makeup and facial prosthetics to resemble a dark-skinned woman, as opposed to simply casting one. While this could be written off as a harmless issue of poor casting, it again plays into the reoccurring issue of fairer-skinned women being casted to play lead roles, even when they do not represent the intended image of the character. In 2017, Justin Simeon's Netflix series Dear White People kicked up a storm for its controversial approach to discussing racial issues in America. For the most part, people felt the show's abrasive radicalism showed discrimination against all white people and played into the issues it was satirizing. On that note, I developed a particular distaste for the show for how it challenged the issues of white privilege, but conveniently failed to discuss the protagonist's privilege in this discussion for having a close proximity to whiteness. My issue with the show is that while addressing the issue of colorism, it unironically plays back into it within the storyline. The dark-skinned women on the show are either in the sidelines of their fair-skinned best friend, picking up after the leftovers of their popularity, bitter and cruel with an inferiority complex, or damn near psychotic, while both fair-skinned cast members were given the privilege of being multi-dimensional characters with a balanced backstory. Where the 2014 film Dear White People, which inspired this series, had a fair amount of gimmick and caricature for these stereotypes to be satirical and telling, the series failed to do so. And in my personal opinion, just came across as hypocritical as opposed to satirical.
Dear white people, you made me hate myself as a kid. So now I hate you, and that's my secret shame. Dear white people, if you wanted to demoralize us with your European beauty standards, mission accomplished.
Now, let's discuss Viola Davis. Viola Davis's role in How to Get Away with Murder made her a household name after her portrayal of Annalise Keating, in what was arguably one of the most gripping performances on television.
How to Get Away with Murder.
Here we go.
Annalise played a strong, independent woman who not only took on the role of a mother for her law students, more closely played the role of a father. Her approach to parenting was one that forced her non-biological children to engage in risk-taking. Her persona lacked empathy, and quite frankly, she provided safety and protection for her law students without the emotional security a mother would typically give. Thus, her role was devised around her masculinity and what often seemed to be her lack of humanity. The issue with the strong, independent trope for Viola Davis is that instead of challenging the world that disproportionately spars the dark-skinned woman and villainizes her, it tells her to wear more padding and to just deal with its blows. Thus, she's villainized for having to live a life without having the chance to heal, and is expected to have the same amount of patience and warmth as her counterparts. In this video, Viola Davis discusses the effects of colorism on her mental health during her career.
Take with pop culture, it's like they have clubs and parties, light skin versus dark skin girls.
Still feel like that's what we're fighting, healing from the past. I think that it affects everything that we do. It affects our relationships, it affects our art.
This wouldn't be a video on my channel if I left it on a negative note. So here is an appreciation of some directors and producers and writers that were able to cast dark-skinned leads with unproblematic characters and storylines.
Hi, I'm Spike Lee. I'm not directing. I do this. Anyway, I had this new comedy coming out. It's a very funny show. She's Gotta Have It. Check this out.
My first impressions of Nola Darling, insatiable.
There's a girl that I once knew who often had a friend or two. She gave them time of waiting rhyme sublime.
This corset is really uncomfortable. So could we all just wrap it up and go home? My king.
Stop it. Stop it.
Let's go! Hey, what was that?
Don't worry about it.
Don't scare me like that, colonizer. It was my duty to fight for what I love. I should have...